Welcome back to a Rural Focus here on Triple M, and still with me we've got solicitor from Ballywick Legal, Matilda Lloyd. So Matilda, you were talking about compliance of investigators coming on site or onto the farm from Worksafe WA. What is one thing that farmers may not necessarily be aware of?
A power that I think probably goes unrecognised is they can also seize items. So if they find something that is dangerous or a hazard in the workplace, they can actually seize that pending further investigation. And they can also obviously copy and retain information. So they can actually take copies of anything that they see on farm and take that away. Now, following an investigation, an inspector can either issue a compliance notice, and so that would be in the form of an improvement notice. So if they pick up that a piece of machinery isn't up to standard or it's unsafe, they might issue an improvement notice saying that actually has to be improved, and they put a date in there for when compliance is required. There's a penalty if it isn't, and that's usually a fine. They could also issue a prohibition notice. So if it's a serious hazard in the workplace, they might issue a notice saying that cannot be carried out, or it has to be carried out in a different way. And if failure to comply with that would result in a fine. Now, these fines vary from anywhere in the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, and even hundreds and hundreds of thousands, depending whether it's an individual or a body corporate. There is also a non-disturbance notice. So if there is an incident on farm, whether that's an accident or a death, a non-disturbance notice could be issued, which essentially means that an area that's not to be disturbed has to be blocked off until an inspector says that, the notice no longer applies. They're just kind of some of the notices that can be provided following an inspection. But of course, if an inspector finds that there is non-compliance on the property and there is serious safety concerns or hazards, then they could obviously go down the prosecution route if that was needed, if an offence had been committed under the Act. So that's a bit of an overview of what inspections look like when it comes to Worksafe WA.
So if Worksafe was to come onto a farm premises, does a farmer have the right to ask for a lawyer to be present, or their solicitor, or any sort of law representation before anything goes ahead? Or are Worksafe able to just continue on with their inquiries?
Look, it's not prescribed in legislation. Obviously, everyone's entitled to representation. So a farmer could, seek that they have legal representatives there. But under the Act, essentially, if an inspector comes on, they provide their identification. So that's one thing that a farmer could do. They could actually ask the inspector to provide their identification tag to understand who they are and what their role is. But there's also provisions under the Act where a person conducting a business that's having the inspection carried out on their property, they do have to comply. So they do have to assist and comply with an inspector and the actions they want to undertake. If they don't, there is also a penalty that can be imposed.
That is some great information there for our farmers to be aware of. Thank you for joining us this morning and talking about Worksafe WA.
Thanks, David.
That was Matilda Lloyd from Ballywick Legal here on Rural Focus Triple M.